Sophie Scamps, Dr. Sophie Scamps, is the MP for Mackellar on the Northern Beaches, and she'll be speaking today at the summit. Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
So I think you and the other independents were very much elected on one of the reasons was climate change and action needed. How much impact do you think you can actually have within the Australian Parliament, and as Australia is only one country in the world?
Look, we've changed the conversation. As we saw, the direction of the country at the last term was heading in one way, and that was not really acting on climate change. And the people in my electorate and other electorates around the country spoke up and voted for strong climate action. And so the direction of our country to act on climate change has changed dramatically. I think of it as turning a major ship around. We've changed direction and now we need to accelerate. And there's a lot of exciting opportunities as we go forward for Australia. We know we're in a great position because we have all these natural resources. We have the wind, we have the sun, we have storage capacity. So we have this opportunity to set ourselves up for a really prosperous future if we take the opportunity now. So
do you think it's gone off the boil, though, with cost of living being such an issue for people, housing, interest rates? Is it still front of mind, and do people think we can still afford to make the changes we need?
Look, I would absolutely agree. Cost of living is such a major issue for people at the moment, and of course that is front of mind. But there's so many changes that we can do that would benefit both our hip pockets and also action on climate change. And the government in their budget can do a lot more to support people to electrify their homes, to make their homes energy efficient, things like that, which would save people money in the long run. And also even talking about the vehicle efficiency standards, that in the long run is a measure that will save people a lot of money because they won't have to fill up at the petrol station nearly as often, saving hundreds of dollars on petrol each year. So the two are inextricably linked in many ways. But I agree with you. Cost of living is a major issue, but underlying that, there is still this anxiety that we need to be doing more on climate as well.
Well, they are linked so much, though, like our insurance premiums are going up because of climate change. Food prices are going up because of what farmers have been through with floods over the last few years. There's that total connection.
Yeah, complete connection. And people are unable to insure their homes now, and that affects people in my electorate as well. We have some very low-lying areas, so insurance premiums are going very high. And then we did see what happened with the floods in Lismore. The price of food went up straight away. And also you had transport hubs that were completely inundated and destroyed as well. So it does have a long-lasting impact. And if we don't act now, then these costs to people in their hip pockets will continue to rise.
So how did you react when you woke up to this news this morning that every climate record broken last year? Particularly the concern is the temperature of the water, 29 degrees off Sydney, we're hearing, has been, record low levels of sea ice. Do you wake up going, oh my God, or do you have hope that we can turn this big ship, as you said, around?
We've got to have hope. I think some years ago, the reason that I'm in politics is because some years ago I felt helpless because I felt that the government was not responding in a way that they should be, in a responsible way that looked after future generations and our children. I think once you step in and you start acting and you start doing whatever you can to make a change, then you start to feel far more hopeful. And I know that there's a lot of great work happening out there. We just had a briefing yesterday from the Climate Council, and they're soon to release a pathway to get to net zero by 2035. So we know that the technology there, we know that the ideas are there, but what we need is the political will. And so that's why I've been doing a lot of work around ending this jobs for mates, making sure that there's far greater transparency and integrity and independence in a lot of the bodies that underpin our democracy. So one of the things that I'm looking at right now is we're going to be debating our national environment laws. There's a general understanding that they've absolutely been an abysmal failure in recent years because the state of the environment report was so dire. There's extinctions happening, the ecosystems at the brink of collapse. We know we need to change our environment laws. So why hasn't that happened for decades? Well, one of the reasons is that there's outside influence from donations, there's outside influence from lobbyists, and then also when we look at bodies that are supposed to be policing all these things, like the new EPA will do, we know that they're often people to those bodies are appointed at the discretion of the minister. So there's political influence as well. So one of my tasks that I see is building greater integrity into our democratic institutions in any way we can. I'm working on jobs for mates, ending jobs for mates, I should say. I know Dr. Monique Ryan, an independent from Victoria, she's working on lobbying reform. We've got Kate Cheney and the rest of us also working on donation reform. All these things need to be strengthened so that we can take out that influence from, political decision making. And so a body, particularly like the EPA, the Environment Protection Authority, needs to be independent of government.
Sophie Scamps is with us, the MP for Mackellar on the Northern Beaches, part of this summit today on climate change that comes as we're hearing that every major global climate record broken last year. I mean, you mentioned funding for politicians there too, but you've also benefited from that, from donations for people who wanted action on climate change, such as Simon Holmes à Court.
Yeah, well, let me just talk about Climate 200 because there's a lot of sort of misinformation about that. Climate 200 was a body that accepted donations from over 11,000 people from around the country. So it's a way that people felt that they could participate in their democracy. People do want to see climate action, and that's why you had so many different donors from around the country to Climate 200, because they wanted people in government who were going to act on climate change. So it wasn't just, people always refer to Simon Holmes à Court. He was just one of the donors to that body. So many people, it's a way of exercising their democratic right in many ways. We had many volunteers that donated their time. We had so many people from within the electorate that donated to us as well in small amounts. So it is a way that people do get involved in their democracy.
We have a text here from Jane, Sophie Scamps, and she says we can all agree to stop extending the life of fossil fuels, with a spurious notion about nuclear being part of the solution. We owe it to the world to use our solar, wind and available land advantage for all. The opposition is saying that nuclear will help because it has no emissions. Where do you stand on that as a future for power in Australia?
Look, one thing I would say is we're already a long way along the pathway to getting renewables in our energy grid. So I think in 2023 last year, there was over 40% of the energy that was provided came from renewable energy sources. So we're already halfway along that journey. It's already happening. There's already so many projects in the pipeline. And we also know that wind and sun, they're free. So that we know that they're the cheapest form of energy. So we're very fortunate here in Australia. I think what we see here with the nuclear debate, I'm technology agnostic. If it was the best solution, we would do it. But the problem here in Australia is that we have no expertise. We would have to change the laws and we would have to start building these things. It would take more than 10 years to build a nuclear reactor, probably 20 years, and it's by far the most expensive form of energy. So it's really a furphy in just delaying what we need to do now, and that is act swiftly and now in this decade to get as much renewable clean energy on board. If we were to go down the nuclear route, then we wouldn't be doing anything until mid-2035 most likely, and that is too late.
And what are your electors in that your part of Sydney telling you about the direction of where Australia is going, and if this is still the biggest issue in their hearts and minds?
It is still, action on climate change is still a major issue, and particularly talking to young people. Young people are very concerned about their future. We know that there's a mental health, ill health epidemic, particularly amongst adolescents. And I think one of the reasons for that is that they feel helpless about their future. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is bring young people back into their democracy so that they feel like they can be heard and they feel like their future is going to be secure. I think when you're facing an uncertain future, then that is a real sense of concern. I agree with you, cost of living is a major issue, but acting on climate is such an important part of reducing cost of living into the future. We need to bring back certainty into our future, and we also need to build a prosperous economy into the future as well. And we have so many opportunities now to do that with manufacturing of things like green iron, green steel, green aluminium. We could be one of the green energy superpowers, but we need to take the opportunity now or we will simply miss out.
So you'd be happy with wind farms off the coast of your area?
Wherever it's best suited, that's one of the things. But what the government has said that they're trying to do, there's areas that are traditionally industrialised, such as the Hunter and down south, where the transition is happening. So there are areas where there has been coal mining going on. We know the transition away from coal is already happening. So what we don't want to see is people left with no job opportunities into the future. So actually having wind farms in those areas, people in those parts of the world are quite excited that there will be job opportunities into the future as well. And so it's working with communities to make sure that the best outcomes for communities are happening. People want to know that they have a secure job opportunity into the future, and bringing in some of these new technologies provides that for them.
Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, Sarah.
Dr. Sophie Scamps, she's the MP for Mackellar, part of this Climate Integrity Summit that begins in about 15 minutes' time in Canberra this morning.